watching Let's Chat.
Many of you know our next guest. Many of you do not, but you certainly are familiar with his work. This is Jeff Arnett, and for many years, Jeff Arnett was the master distiller at this little place called Jack Daniel Distillery up the road. Jeff, good to see you.
All right, Chip, really good to see you.
You, quite a storied career in the world of distilled spirits. We're going to get to this in a moment, but first, I got to ask you, you started off in the world of coffee of all places.
I did.
How?
You know, actually, that was by accident in so many ways, because from the time I was 16, I loved cars. You know, when my dad gave me a set of keys, it was like a Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am. As a 16-year-old, that was just, it was like awesome.
Sure.
So I went away to college and got an engineering degree, and I'd hoped to work in the automotive field. And it was a terrible time in the U.S. auto industry when I graduated from college, so I had an engineering degree, was just looking for work. But my hometown of Jackson, Tennessee, the biggest industrial employer there was Procter & Gamble.
Right.
And they had a Pringles plant there, and they also made Duncan Hines cake mixes and frosting, so it was part of their food and beverage division.
Yeah.
So I ended up interviewing with them coming out of college, and they told me they weren't going to hire at the Jackson plant in Tennessee, but they did have openings at the Folger Coffee Company in New Orleans if I wanted to interview there. So
not a bad place for a college grad.
Not a bad place. I'd been down, actually my senior year of college, I'd gone down to Mardi Gras. and I told everybody, I'm like, this place was really fun, I'm just not sure I'd want to live here.
Sure.
So I ended up actually living in Slidell, and I drove across the Twin Spans every morning for about 4.5 years, learned how to make coffee. In making coffee, that plant did all the classing and grading of coffee beans. Mm-hmm. So the old coffee masters of Folgers were all resident there. Yeah. So you learned how to taste the bean. You basically brought it in, you roasted it, grinded it, brewed it individually,
right.
And then you would go through a classing and grading process based on flavor, acidity, body, all the different attributes of the bean, and thinking furthermore about how you could put them together so they were better together than they were apart.
Sure.
So learn the sensory sciences in coffee first.
And a few years later, you are working at the Jack Daniel Distillery, first as their quality control master.
I was, yeah.
And you spent how many years there?
I came in 2001. I spent my first 7 years as the quality control manager there, and then was named master distiller in 2008.
And you were named the 7th master distiller for Old Number 7.
Yeah, and I'd been there 7 years, so it was like my lucky number. So,
trifecta.
Yeah, and pretty long history. You know, the distillery had been around since 1866, so it had been a very short list of people who had ever served as master distiller there, and it was quite the honor for me to be able to take that title.
And under your guidance, their product line went from 3 different products to 11,
yeah.
One of the ones you came out with, or you were responsible for.
Right, so when I first got there, like I said, I was a quality control manager, but I took over the single barrel processing area, and that had been the last new product that had come in. So there was our Old Number 7 Black Label Tennessee whiskey that everyone knows Jack Daniels for. There was the Double Mellow Gentleman Jack, and then there was the single barrel. So those were the 3 that I started with, and from there, we added honey, fire, and apple, so we did 3 flavor variants of Jack Daniels. We also introduced the first new grain bill, which was a rye whiskey, and we did a single barrel version of that, so that actually ended up being 2 different products. We did the Gold and the Sinatra. Yeah. And we did our first cast strength while I was there, so literally took from 3 products in the marketplace up to 11 over a period of about 10 years.
And with a correspondingly big increase in market share as well. So you were at the pinnacle of the distilling profession, and one day you walk in and go, I quit.
It wasn't quite that abrupt.
Well, I know, but you left. How many people would leave the master distiller job at the Jack Daniel Distillery?
Well, only one, because I'm the only one who's ever done that. And it, like I said, it was quite an honor. But I was in a unique position there. I had an assistant master distiller, so I felt like I could leave Jack Daniels without necessarily leaving them without someone.
Right.
And Chris Fletcher was a great guy. He had been working with me for about 5 or 6 years already, so he kind of knew everything that was coming, everything that was laid out in the warehouses, what the plans were for those. So I felt like we had great continuity. If I did step aside, to just let him take the ball and run with it, and it allowed me to go and do something else.
What you are doing now. You and a group of other folks have formed Company Distilling.
Yep.
Kind of a strange name for a whiskey.
It is.
Or a bourbon, excuse me.
It is, and when I grew up as a kid, I can remember, they weren't always family members, but my mom used to tell me, you need to go and clean up your room because we have company coming over. So these were people that were important to us, that we always wanted to do our best for. And that's really where the name came from. The origin of company. Today we think of business entities anytime we hear the name company, but it used to be those you break bread with. So that's where it started originally, and that was our story as a group of people. So in addition to being the master distiller at Jack Daniels, I also served on the board of the Tennessee Distillers Guild. So I met a lot of the small distillers, and they probably didn't know it at the time, but I was jealous of a lot of the smaller distillers and the freedoms that they had.
Sometimes
to do
bigger
things.
is not always better.
Well, you know, it's clearly Jack Daniel's has so much going for it. There's nothing that it couldn't do.
Hold that thought right there. We're going to take a quick break. Got to pay a couple of bills. We are back with Jeff Arnett. We're going to highlight the new product he's behind, Company Distilling. We're back with more of Let's Chat after this.